the Nokia 8 Sirocco is going to be a rather difficult device for me to review. That's because on the one hand, it's a device that I personally really like using, but on the other hand, it's a device that I can't wholeheartedly recommend to everyone without some big caveats. I'm Adam Schnitzky, stick around for the full review and I'll dig into why that is. So one thing's for sure, this is definitely one of the most beautiful Nokia devices that HMD Global has made so far. It's really unique, it's really different, and it's definitely eye-catching and head-turning. We've seen just what they can do with a mid-ranger in the 7 Plus, and this is their stab at a flagship, and it really shows. So the device is made out of stainless steel and it's covered almost entirely in Gorilla Glass 5. That glass is on the front and the back, and it curves to a nice point on the edges, giving it a kind of tapered effect, and it's incredibly slim at just 7.5 millimeters. That glass and that metal gives it a really weighty and premium feel in the hand, and it just looks and shouts quality. The screen is also absolutely stunning. It's a 2K P AMOLED display that curves at the edges, giving it that cascading waterfall effect like the S8 or the S9. The blacks are absolutely black. It's incredibly sharp and crisp. Unlike some other flagship devices, this isn't an 18:9 aspect ratio, it's a typical 16:9, which is interesting because they opted to go with 18:9 for the 7 Plus, but a lot of people actually prefer the 16:9, and in a sea of devices that are all getting taller, it helps it to stand out even more. It feels quite square in the hand, and that helps with one-handed use actually. One downside to all of these sturdy materials and the incredibly slim form factor though, is that some people have complained that it feels a little bit sharp and uncomfortable to hold in one hand. Personally, I don't find this to be a problem. It's not so sharp that it's going to draw blood or anything, it's just a little bit narrower at the edges and a little bit harsher than you might be used to. I would say that this would hurt a lot if you threw it at someone, but then I don't think that Nokia is actively encouraging you to do that. It does mean that this doubles up as a nice self-defense device though. To me, I just absolutely love this design. I think it feels and looks really nice, and I don't mind holding it in my hand either. In fact, the reason that I'm willing to overlook some of the shortcomings that I'm going to talk about in a moment is just because I like the experience of using it so much. To me, it has that X factor. One of the big compromises that's had to be made in order to make this device so slim though is the omission of a headphone jack, and I know that a lot of you are going to find that to be a bit of a downside. Likewise, another downside of having such a nice slim device is that there's rather a camera bulge on here. In fact, it's one of the biggest camera bulges that I've seen in a long time on a modern device. Again, that's not a big issue for me personally. I don't mind the look of the camera bulge, but when it starts getting in the way of practical use, then it's a bit more of an issue. You sit this on a table and it sits very much at an angle, and then it wobbles on that camera bulge. So if you want to use it in that position, it's going to rock around. There's also a fingerprint sensor on the back, which works really well. It's very quick, but at the same time, it's very difficult to find. It's completely flush with the device, which I don't know why it needs to be, seeing as that bulge is already there with the camera, but it is, it's flush with the device, and it's quite hard to find with one finger, which isn't so much of a problem, once again with the 7 Plus. And one slight mile on that beautiful screen, unfortunately, is that where it curves, you do see quite a big color shift. It's very tinted, and I didn't notice this so much on other curved displays, and in fact, actually, the color temperature veers a little bit blue in general. But don't let that put you off, because I think the screen in general is wonderful. One more plus about the design though, it is IP67 certified against water and dust, so you can submerge this about 1.5 meters underwater if you wish. Nice to have that peace of mind, means you can take it in the shower, means you can use it in the rain and not worry too much. Another thing about the design that's going to be divisive is the buttons. So when you've got an edge here that's so slim, that means you're going to have buttons that are really slim, and they're kind of sharp too, and a little bit tricky to find likewise. Again, I don't mind this. In fact, I kind of like them. Again, they're different, and I like different, but not everyone will like them. And I really recommend actually going to a shop and picking up this device, feeling it, giving it a go yourself before you make a decision on it. So yeah, it feels great to use, it looks great to use, it's really different, it turns heads, I like all of those things a lot, but it feels as though this is a case of maybe a little bit of style over substance, or at least form over function, to the point where there are some impracticalities of the way it's been designed that you're going to need to keep in mind when you buy this. So this is a £699 device here in the UK, which means you're going to expect a certain level of premium build, which it's definitely got, but you also expect premium performance. You expect this to be able to compete with other flagships on the market for a similar sort of price range. Can this do that? Well, in terms of the specs, this is running a Snapdragon 835 chipset, and it's backed up by 6 GB of RAM. That is not a next-gen processor, it's the same one found in the Galaxy S8, not the S9, meaning you're not getting very top of the range performance out of this device. Is that going to be an issue? Well, in reality, no, it's not an issue. In terms of performance, this can do everything you're going to want it to do, run everything from the Play Store really nicely. The performance is really smooth on here. Everything is buttery smooth, everything's quick, and I even got the GameCube emulator, the Dolphin emulator up and running, meaning that I could play Metroid Prime and Zelda Wind Waker with relatively good frame rates. Not great, but acceptable. And that's quite a nice benchmark. It shows just how powerful this thing is. Fortunately, one thing that it has going in its favor in terms of performance is the operating system. This is running Android Oreo, and it's part of the Android One program, just like the rest of HMD's new devices. That means that it's, basic stock Android. It doesn't have any bloatware. It's going to be the first to receive security patches and updates. It doesn't have any ugly UI on top of it that's going to be divisive and people aren't going to like. You can customize it however you like. So that helps with the performance. It's really smooth, it's really quick. It's already upgraded to Android 8.1, and it's going to be one of the first to get Android P when that comes out. So all of that's great. And we know that HMD's got a good track record of updating their devices, of pushing out those software updates. So you can rest assured that you will get that latest experience. When you combine that with a really damn good chipset, even if it's not the latest, you do get really good performance, and so I don't think performance is going to be an issue. It's just a shame it's not the very best out there, considering that it's competing with the very best out there. Actually, gaming on this device in general is really good. That Adreno 540 GPU is more than up to the task of playing any of the games from the Play Store without a stutter. Like I said, the screen's really beautiful, so consuming media is also really great on this device. And the speaker's also nice and loud. Of course, it's just a single speaker down the bottom, no dual front-facing speakers here, but it gets the job done, and actually it's quite good at filling a room. One mark against the performance and the experience, though, unfortunately, is that once again, as with the 7 Plus, I did encounter a few strange glitches. Not as bad this time around, but still worth noting. So the YouTube app, for instance, would often stutter with the audio. I'd have to close it and open it again and carry on watching a video from wherever I was. Likewise, I had the Google app continuously closing on me for no reason. I just had to keep dismissing that notification, and a couple of other things like that. Obviously, those are Google apps, but for some reason it seems that it's not playing all that nicely with the 8 Sirocco firmware, and hopefully that'll be fixed with an update, but for me, that's what I experienced. And there were some issues as well with the camera app, which I'll talk about in a moment. In terms of storage, you get 128 GB, so plenty generous. It's not expandable, unfortunately. Once again, I think that's down to the slim profile of the device, but with 128 GB, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. The battery is a very ample 3,260 mAh, which is plenty for getting through a day, and especially when you combine it with that Android One experience. It's not as good as the Nokia 7 Plus. The standby time is significantly lower, but like I say, I'll easily get you through a day, even with moderate to heavy use. You're probably just not going to be pushing multiple days on this device. Fortunately, it also comes with fast charging and wireless charging, so it's very easy and quick to top that back up when you do finally run out of juice. And that brings us to the camera, which these days, of course, is one of the most important deciding factors when it comes to choosing a device. And remember, once again, this is a £699 device. We're competing with the big flagships on the market. So can this compete with the likes of the Pixel 2, the Galaxy S9, etc., the Huawei P20 Pro? The short answer to that is no, unfortunately. The primary shooter on this is a 12 megapixel lens with an f1.75 aperture and the same sensor found on the Pixel 2 with 1.4 micron pixels. This is then backed up by a 13 megapixel telephoto lens capable of 2 times lossless optical zoom. And that one has an f2.6 aperture. Because it's got 2 lenses there, it's capable of doing the bokeh effect, the portrait mode, and the app gives you a pro mode, so you've got control over things like aperture, shutter speed, white balance, etc. So in theory, on paper, it all sounds very good. It's got a high megapixel count, it's got a great sensor in there, dual lenses, and great controls, but for some reason, to me, the results just aren't up there with the very best in class. It just seems to me that when you take a photo with the S9 or with the Pixel, it looks that little bit crisper, that little bit more vibrant as compared with what you get from this. And whether that's down to image processing or the hardware. These are Zeiss branded, by the way, the lenses, meaning that they should be fine-tuned by someone who knows what they're doing, but there's just something missing, just that extra X factor that I was talking about earlier. And you can get some great performance from it if you're patient and if you have the right conditions. Actually, the f1.75 aperture is a big plus for me because I love doing those shallow depth of field effect photos, and when you combine it with the saturation, which is actually really good as well, you get some quite artistic looking photos, just only in the right circumstances, or if you're willing to put in the work with that pro mode. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier though, there are some problems I encountered with the camera app, and in particular, I struggled with the bokeh mode, getting that to work. In fact, it probably didn't work more often than it did work. So I'd open up the camera, I'd select bokeh mode, and I'd point it at the subject, and it would say depth success. So you'd assume from that that everything's working hunky-dory, but then I'd not see any blurring around the background in the live preview. When I took the photo, I also wouldn't see any blurring. That's if I could even open the photo, because very often I'd then open the photo, it would crash or something, just nothing would happen. I'd tap the photo, it wouldn't open, and then it would close out of the app, or it would weirdly switch into video mode. Then I'd go into the gallery and the photo would be nowhere to be found. Also, I could only take one photo like this. So that's a big problem really, and hopefully again it'll be fixed with software updates, and that's why I don't let these things bring the score down when I'm reviewing something too much, because hopefully they'll be fixed, and especially because HMD does have a good track record in that regard. But it's a bit concerning, it's a shame that out of the box it's not working the way it should, and especially when it's such an expensive device. And it leads me to think that HMD Global needs to do some work on the software side of things, because the hardware's all really good and they're just not getting the most out of it, and that seems to be what's going on with the camera in general, in fact. And I don't think that this is just a glitch with my unit, because I have the 7 Plus and I reviewed that and I discussed many very similar issues with that one. So when you combine these factors, it seems likely to me that the software is somehow letting the side down a little bit, and hopefully that'll improve, especially considering it's on Android 1 and you'd expect the software to be really good. When it comes to the front-facing camera, unfortunately it's a bit more bad news. It's only a 5 megapixel sensor, which is a considerable downgrade from not only the Nokia 8, the predecessor to the Nokia 8 Sirocco, but also the Nokia 7 Plus, which has a 16 megapixel front-facing camera. It's got a nice wide angle, it's easy to get a lot of people in. Images do look really crisp actually, and the bokeh feature works a lot better on the front-facing camera than it does on the rear camera at the moment. So it's not, it's not terrible, but it's just not perfect. The rear camera is capable of video up to 4K at 30 FPS. The front-facing camera is capable of 1080p. These are perfectly serviceable, they're what you'd expect, but of course there's no optical image stabilization, it seems, so that's one downside on that. What the video does have going for it is the 3 microphones built into the device, which is supposed to give you 3D spatial audio, and that's a really nice feature. It does seem to work well from my tests, and it's something I'd like to see in more devices actually. The Bothy feature also makes a comeback. This is HMD's much touted ability to film or take photos from the front and rear cameras at the same time. Not quite the groundbreaking feature that they have you believe, it's very easy to mimic, and I did say that I don't think it's really got all that much practical benefit. However, to be fair, I've actually found myself using it a little bit, and in fact when making videos on Instagram for you guys, I have been using that Bothy mode in order to film the device I'm talking about and myself at the same time, so credit where credit's due, it does have its uses, and actually I'll miss it when it's gone. On the 7 Plus, I didn't like the Bothy feature because I did a long vlog and the audio got out of sync. On the 8 Sirocco, no such issue so far, touch wood. So I guess, again, that comes down to the better hardware. I guess you can think of the camera a lot like that Snapdragon 835 chipset. There's nothing wrong with it, it's a great performer, in fact it's probably superior to an awful lot of what's on the market. It's just that it's not the very best, and when you consider the price point and you consider the way that this device is positioning itself, you'd be reasonable in expecting this to compete with the very best out there, and it just doesn't quite. It's perfectly good, it's just lacking that X factor. But that's the camera, that's the performance, and the design, like I say, for me, has that X factor. It's actually not practical really, and that's why, for a lot of people, I don't think that that beautiful design is going to outweigh the drawbacks, the downsides that I've just discussed. However, if like me, you pick it up and you just fall in love with it, which could happen, then you might find that this is the device for you. So I'm going to say it's a good device, I do recommend it, it's really well made. It is different, which I like. It's got a lot of great features. It performs really well. Android 1 is a huge bonus. However, it's not for everyone, and it's not the most powerful or the best performer for the price, and it does have some practical drawbacks. It's not a home run, but it is a very good phone, and hopefully the Nokia 8 Sirocco 2, or whatever the heck HMD is going to call the next one of these, will be that amazing return to form that this so almost was. So I hope you found this video useful and interesting, guys. If you did, then please leave a like, please share it around, that helps us out immensely. Comment down below and let me know what you think of the Nokia 8 Sirocco. Do you have any questions? Did I miss anything? Check out the full review over at the website, androidauthority.com, where we go into a lot more depth. Subscribe to the channel if you want more like this, hit the bell button for notifications, and of course, check out androidauthority.com, for we're your source for all things Android.